I'm Eric Lee, director of the Kimbell Art Museum. Today I'm going to give you a tour of the Renzo Piano Pavilion, which opened in November of 2013, directly opposite from the original Louis Kahn building, which opened in October of 1972. Directly behind me is the south end of the Renzo Piano Pavilion. When designing the pavilion for the Kimbell Art Museum, Renzo Piano had a very difficult challenge. The Louis Kahn building is widely regarded as one of the masterpieces of the modern era, and Renzo Piano had to be respectful of the Louis Kahn building. At the same time, he wanted to build a strong building in and of itself. His building was sited directly opposite from the Louis Kahn building, and it echoes the Louis Kahn building in many ways, but he's always very respectful, including when you approach the Renzo Piano building, there's a garage underground between the two buildings, and when you come up in the elevator from the garage, the elevator, which is outdoors, directly opens facing the Louis Kahn building. So from the very beginning, that respect that Renzo Piano had towards the Louis Kahn building is there. So the distance between the two buildings was very critical, and the buildings are roughly 167 feet from column to column, and 196 feet from wall to wall. Renzo Piano said that this distance was far enough, yet close enough for a conversation, and he very much thought of the two buildings in dialogue. And as we tour through the building today, I'm going to point out quite a few features in which the Renzo Piano building echoes the Louis Kahn building. And one of those is with the columns that you see on the south end of the Renzo Piano building. The dimensions of these columns was based on the dimensions of the Louis Kahn columns under the portico. Also with the Renzo Piano building, you can see from this vantage point that the building is composed of two parts. The front part, which is the part you see with the colonnade, has a glass roof with photovoltaic cells that collect energy from the sun. So it's a very energy efficient building. You can also see a retaining wall behind this front part of the building. And the retaining wall is in front of the rear portion of the building, which actually has a sod roof. It's a grass roof that you can actually walk on. The Renzo Piano auditorium is underneath that part of the roof. Before heading inside, I want to spend a few minutes talking about the concrete that the Renzo Piano Pavilion is made of. This concrete is very special concrete. The walls are actually 2% titanium by volume. And we spent a lot of time on this concrete because we were going to hang art directly on the concrete. Contemporary art looks good on any kind of concrete, but old masters required something a little more refined than ordinary concrete. And so Renzo Piano's office went on a quest to create concrete walls that are very silky smooth and also have a lighter gray color than is typical in concrete. And I think the results that were achieved are just amazing. Many mock-up walls were built before the right formula was found with, as I said before, 2% titanium. The concrete walls are something of an engineering feat. This is a detail that I think most visitors to the Kimbell don't realize, but architects and engineers are amazed by. The walls are 30-foot panels, and the tie bar holes appear only at the ends of the walls. This is because we hang art directly on the walls, and we wanted very little visual interference with the art that hangs on the walls. So it was important that the concrete walls be visually uninterrupted. But it was very difficult to create walls that did not have tie bar holes throughout. These walls were especially tricky to produce because it isn't just a single wall. There are two walls that are close together, and there's mechanical equipment and ductwork between the two walls. So it was exceptionally difficult to create these 30-foot long walls that were poured in place that are double with so few tie bar holes. But Renzo Piano believed that it would be dishonest to just cover up the tie bar holes. He wanted the building to show evidence of its making, not unlike what Louis Kahn wanted in his building. So Renzo Piano saw this as architectural honesty, and it took a great deal of effort and expertise to design walls like this. I'm now standing in the lobby of the Renzo Piano building, and one of the first things one notices when entering this space is the lightness of the space. There are glass walls on either side, and one looks out towards the east at the Louis Kahn building. It's a beautiful view of the Louis Kahn building from the Renzo Piano lobby. And again, the Renzo Piano building really is all about the Louis Kahn building. It's paying homage to the Louis Kahn building and is very respectful of it. This building has many views that look out onto the campus surrounding the building. It's a very extroverted building, unlike the Louis Kahn building, which I believe is more introverted. This building is also very light, with all of the glass in the building. And that is also unlike the Louis Kahn building, which has more weight and gravitas. This building is much lighter. Renzo Piano also loves transparency. And so when you're standing in the lobby, you can see through layers of glass back through to the auditorium. So that's another feature of the piano building that is very different from the Kahn building. They complement one another in many ways, but the piano building still echoes and is very respectful of the Louis Kahn building. Now, one of the features one notices immediately when entering this space are the beams. These are 100-foot Douglas fir glulam beams. Glulam means the wood is glued together. These were put together in Vancouver and then trucked down to the Kimbell. When these beams first were put on top of the building, they actually had a curve to them. And I think that curve surprised many people because everyone expected these beams to be flat. But this was because the weight of the roof would flatten the beams so that they would look like how they look today. Before the glass roof of the photovoltaic cells was placed on top of the building, however, the beams had to be straightened. So cables pulled the beams down straight. At one point during the construction of this building, this space had cables pulling all of the beams down so that the glass would not break when the glass roof was placed on top of the building. This is a very complicated, complex building technologically. It looks so simple, this building, but it's an extremely complex building. The beams also create what is basically like a vaulted space between them. And this vaulted space is Renzo Piano's echoes of the Kahn building. They are this building's equivalent of the vaults that we see in the Louis Kahn building. And you'll see also in the lobby, there's no scrim between the beams. But when we get into the galleries, you'll see that Renzo Piano decided to put a scrim between the beams. Now that scrim is not there for conservation purposes to protect the art so much as to diffuse the light that comes from above. And it makes for a more ethereal light. Now, I mentioned earlier that the roof, the glass roof, has photovoltaic cells. Those cells collect energy from the sun. They also serve to block out or let in as much natural light as we want. So when we close the photovoltaic cells a bit more, we block out more natural light. But then if we want more natural light in the galleries, we simply open them a bit more. I'm now standing in the South Gallery of the Renzo Piano building, which is the gallery where we usually hold our special exhibitions. The current special exhibition being Turner's Modern World. This is an extremely flexible space that allows us to move and reconfigure the walls however we want to, according to the exhibition that we have on view. It is unusually dark at the moment because we have quite a few Turner watercolors in this exhibition, and watercolors require very low light levels, so we had to close those photovoltaic cells just about all the way so as to block out most of the natural light. But in this space, you can see how we hang art directly on the concrete walls. And the hanging system is very similar to what we have in the Louis Kahn building, where we hang art directly on the travertine walls. There are cables that attach to the frames, and then they go up and hook up around the top of the concrete walls, so we don't have to drill holes into the concrete. All of the art is hanging from cables, unless we put up a wall in front of a concrete wall, in which case we nail the frames directly into the wall. Now we do this, we put walls in front of the concrete for a number of reasons. Sometimes the paintings are so large, we think it's just safer to have it attached to a wall. But then also the tone of the fabric is sometimes a warmer tone fabric, and warmer tone paintings, we've noticed, look better against a warmer tone background. Cooler tone paintings, like this painting from the Museum of Fine Arts Houston, they tend to look better on the cooler tone concrete. The walls, as I mentioned before, are movable. They allow for a flexible exhibition design, and we usually move the walls before every exhibition. And you'll see in the floor that they're paired bolts. And people often ask me what these bolts are for. Those bolts are for securing the walls. The walls were designed by the engineers Gopian, and they presented a challenge to Renzo Piano because he wanted thin, movable walls. But he could not, for structural reasons, attach the walls to the ceiling. So this created a problem. And then he went to Gopian, and they came up with the idea of an aluminum skeletal structure, which is inside these walls. And that aluminum skeletal structure attaches to the floor according to the bolt pattern. And then we cover that aluminum skeletal structure with plywood, and the plywood in turn is covered with fabric. It's not unlike what we do in the Kahn building. When we move the walls in the Kahn building, we also have plywood that's covered with fabric. But what is different from the Kahn building is the fact that these walls are supported just from the floor, and there's this aluminum skeletal structure inside, and these walls are extremely sturdy. I remember at one point during the construction of this building, when we were testing the walls, I actually climbed up on one of these skeletal structures and shook it as much as I could. They don't budge whatsoever. And so it's a great solution that the engineers at Gopian devised for these thin, movable walls. But I think the galleries in the piano building are extremely successful. They're very functional in terms of our exhibition design, but they're also extremely beautiful, and they complement the art so well. At one point, Renzo Piano was thinking of making this gallery more like a white box gallery, like you see often in museums and galleries all over the world during the past 50 years or so. But Having the Louis Kahn building next door with its wonderful, beautiful galleries with travertine, not a white box gallery, Renzo Piano knew that he had to make these galleries a little less neutral than a white box would have made it. And so he decided to incorporate concrete directly into the galleries. And I think it has made all the difference in the world. There's a warmth to the galleries that a white box gallery would not have. So I think the galleries are extremely successful in this building. So now I'm standing in front of the south wall of the South Galleries, and you can see that we have a wall of windows with screens. The screens are down currently because of the light-sensitive works within the galleries. But when we want to, we can raise the screens, and you have a wonderful view towards the South Campus, the south side of the Renzo Piano building. The lawn has an interesting feature from that view. The lawn rises up a little and then dips down, and that's to hide the wheels of the cars that are driving along Lancaster Avenue. But right now, the screens are down. The screens are actually on both the exterior and the interior of the building. The exterior screens are more translucent than the interior screens. And then when they're both down, they block out most of the natural light as we see currently. So again, Renzo Piano's building is a very extroverted building, I like to say, with all of these views looking outside. We're now going to walk from the south galleries of the Piano Pavilion into the west gallery. Our Turner exhibition is currently taking up both galleries in the building, but there's a glass corridor between the two spaces. And we're moving from the front part of the Renzo Piano Pavilion, or the eastern part, into the back part, the western part, the part of the building that has the sod roof, the grass roof that you can actually walk on. But there's a beautiful glass corridor between the two buildings, nicely landscaped. And so you move from this space into what we call the West Gallery of the Renzo Piano Pavilion. And we wanted a gallery that had almost no natural light so that we could show works on paper. And so this building has only one window in it, but even that window has a screen so that we often close it to block out all of the natural light. As I mentioned before, we have Turner watercolors currently on view. So we wanted no natural light in this gallery. But the view from this window is very beautiful. It's a terrace view that looks out towards the Will Rogers Tower. And this view corresponds, you might say, to the interior courtyards of the Louis Kahn building. So you get a glimpse of nature as you're walking through the galleries in both the Louis Kahn building and the Renzo Piano building. But again, the Louis Kahn views are inward looking at an interior courtyard. The views here are looking outside and beyond. I'm now standing at the top of the stairs leading down to the auditorium of the Renzo Piano Pavilion. And this staircase is another echo in the piano building of the Kahn building. So you see a double flight of stairs, as you see in the Louis Kahn building. But Renzo Piano often gives these echoes his own twist. You see that clearly in this staircase here. First of all, the staircase is much, much larger than it is in the Kahn building. But then Renzo Piano has also canted one of the walls here, which gives the staircase a more dramatic effect. You see these canted walls, not only here in the staircase, but also in the staircases leading to the garage in front of the building. And then you see a canted wall on the light well of the piano building, which is behind the auditorium and the offices and classrooms in the piano pavilion. But we'll look at that canted wall later. But why don't we go downstairs and take a look at the auditorium? I'm now in the auditorium of the Renzo Piano Pavilion. This auditorium seats just under 300 people. The Kahn Auditorium, on the other hand, seats around 180 people. And though this is a larger auditorium, it has a very intimate feeling about it. The acoustics are very good for both music and lectures. Often you hear that an auditorium has good acoustics for one rather than the other, but I think that the acoustics are good for both in this space. You see on the glass wall behind the auditorium glass panels that can be adjusted. These are acoustical panels that are adjusted according to the acoustical needs. Likewise, the wood panels that you see on the walls are there for acoustical reasons. And some of the panels have little grooves in them, and those panels are absorptive. They absorb the sound. Other panels don't have those grooves. They're just flat wood panels, and those are reflective. They reflect the sound. And so we had acousticians work on this space to get the acoustics just right for music, but then also good acoustics for lectures. I think one curious thing about lectures in this space, we use microphones for our speakers, but the acoustics are so good that you almost don't even need them. You can hear voices from all over the auditorium very clearly, whether there's a microphone or not. I mentioned when discussing the staircase leading down to the auditorium, the light well that's behind the auditorium. Well, here is that light well. This light well is an echo of a similar light well in the Louis Kahn building. But unlike the Louis Kahn building, where the light well is just seen from the offices, the light well in the piano building is front and center and very public. The wall here is canted like that wall was canted in the staircase. It's at an angle. And it created, as I mentioned before, a very dramatic effect on the staircase. But the canted wall is not there purely for dramatic reasons. It's there for functional reasons too. That canted wall allows for more light to come in here, and then also the staircase outside the auditorium. And it also allows for the light well not to seem pinched at the top. Since the light well is so deep here, if this wall had been perfectly vertical, I think the wall would have appeared very pinched. When walking around the building, one should be sure to look in at the light well. You can see it from Camp Bowie, and it's this very dramatic space seen from outside the building. And it's really one of the most dramatic parts of this building, certainly from the exterior, but it's often overlooked. Renzo Piano loves a sense of transparency. He likes being able to see through layers of glass to different spaces. And you get a sense of that in the classroom spaces behind me here. You see through 1, 2, 3, 4 layers of glass here through to the back wall of the concrete light well at the far western side of the Renzo Piano Pavilion. When the Kimbell opened in 1972, it had no dedicated education spaces. But we changed that with the opening of the Renzo Piano Pavilion. And now we have these wonderful classrooms and studios for our education department. These spaces are usually full of children, school groups, and families, a very vibrant space in the museum. Before leaving our tour, I did want to show you the garage that's underground between the Renzo Piano Pavilion and the Louis Kahn building. It's an extremely beautiful garage, and people are always surprised when they see it here. We could almost exhibit art in this space. I hope you've enjoyed your virtual visit to the Renzo Piano Pavilion at the Kimbell, and I hope you'll visit us soon to see it in person.